Okay, guys, this is one of our last recordings for a while, at least in this format. So I want to go over some, I've got a cheat sheet here. I want to go over some big review items for this big week. First off, you have a test this Friday, okay? That test is going to take place during your scheduled class time. So even though some of you are not scheduled to meet in a live session on Friday, just like when we did the other unit, your test will take place during your time period, during your class period. So Friday, I'm not scheduled to meet with first period, but first period, your test will be from 8 to 8:45, and then that test disappears at 8:45, unless you have some sort of legal document extending that time. So you need to be ready to take that test, logged in your computer 5 minutes early, because it is going to appear in the Google Classroom stream and then disappear later on. That test is going to be worth 50 points. All of my tests from here on out are worth 50 points. It's going to be exactly like, as far as the format goes, of the SLO that you took like the first week of school. But I'll review what that looks like again. There'll be 34 multiple choice questions. So I think last time we had like a quiz, there were only 18. So there's going to be 34 multiple choice questions. Pretty straightforward. There are then going to be 2 short answer questions. Short answer questions generally require 2 sentences to answer, and those are worth 4 points each. So that brings us up to 42 points. You have 34 multiple choice questions worth 1 point each, 2 4-point questions, that gets us up to 42. And then there is 1 extended response. That is an 8-point question. So if you skip that one, you're just lowering your grade, letter grades, several letter grades all at once. You've got to do that that extended response question, and that's 4 to 5 sentences on that one. So we'll want the details in those. So that's 34 plus 8 plus 8, and you end up with 50 points. If you skip all the writing, which a couple of you did on the SLO, then you're going to end up with, best case scenario, a 68% D. And that's assuming you don't miss a single multiple choice. So you don't want to skip the writing. Writing will actually save some of you. So that is going to take place during your class and due by the end of your class. What does it cover? Oh, it covers, actually, I'll review that a little bit today, but it covers about 20% of it, depending on what version of you get, is just on the Declaration of Independence, Northwest Ordinance, and Articles of Confederation, which covers and then the founding of the Constitution, Federalist and Anti-Federalist, stuff we covered 2 weeks ago. The majority of the test, though, covers not the Constitution itself, but really the 27 amendments. So that's what's going to be tested. It's everything that's taken place since our last test. So there's a lot of material there. Now, if you have been watching the videos every day, because they're posted in the stream every day, and you have been taking notes, I think this test is going to be easy. If you've not been taking notes and you're way behind in the videos, you have a choice to make. You can either get the test score that I fear you will get, or because you still have time, you'll go back and watch those videos and get those notes taken. Today, we have a big review guide that's assigned in the stream, because this video is going to end up being fairly short, and that is due by midnight tonight. That review guide, every time I assign something in the Google stream, other than documents of the week, which I give you a week to do, it is due by midnight tonight. So today, for the rest of class, or this recording, I'm going to review the formative review I assigned yesterday. I'm going to review the Bill of Rights worksheet, which is now closed, and I'm going to go over some of the commonly missed questions. I'm going to go over all the questions, and that's just a great review for the test, because I pull test questions right off of those review guides and these formatives. And then I'm going to just send you off to go do that. So let's review that material, but hopefully everybody understands we have a test on Friday. You've got to be ready for that thing, and it takes place during your class. As far as review games, well, let me go over the rest of the week. Wednesday, there will be no recorded lecture because there's no school. Remember, I told you I'll record a lecture for every day we have school. We do not have school on Wednesday. We have a teacher work day. I think it's going to focus mainly on how we're going to get you back into the classroom starting next Monday, if that's the choice you make. Thursday, there will not be a recorded lecture because it's a review game. It's a review game day. So first and third, we have scheduled live sessions. We will meet and we'll play a review game. I can't post a review game because we need that interaction to have that. So I'll post a reminder that says, hey, there's going to be a review game today. Now, 4th and 7th, that wouldn't be very fair to you because your live day is scheduled for Friday, obviously, and that's the day of the test. So what I'm going to do is offer you an optional 1 o'clock on Thursday. You don't have to go, review game. Anybody from 4th or 7th at 1 o'clock, there'll be a link that appears in your classroom and you can go to this optional review game. If you don't want to go to it, you don't have to. You could just be ready for the test on Friday. And then Friday, there is no recorded lecture because it's test day. So things change a little bit around test times, but there's nothing to record when we have a test. It's just you taking the test. So let's review some of the stuff, get you ready for this test. Everybody hopefully understands, and if not, shoot me a question and I'll be happy to answer. So we're going to start off by sharing a little bit from this particular unit. So these are the terms. So I'm going back to the very first page of this unit, and these are the terms from this unit. And I told you at the beginning, I don't care if you know these terms at the beginning, but now that the test is upon us on Friday, you need to make sure you know these terms. And if you're like, oh, I don't know what an anti-federalist is, then you need to figure it out. Again, you can go back to the recorded lectures. That's a nice thing about doing it this way. You can go back in time a little bit and catch up. So what's going to be fair game? Well, I got to move my face, essentially. I've got to move my screen here where my face is. But these notes here on the Declaration of Independence, those are fair game. The Northwest Ordinance and the states that it creates, that's fair game. The Articles of Confederation and how terrible they were, why they were terrible, and then the sort of establishment of the Constitution, 3 branches of government, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, that's all fair game. That's gonna, every version of the test is a little bit different, but it's gonna be roughly 20%. There's one version where it's about 25%, one version where it's 15%, but basically about 20% of the grade. The rest of the grade will be based on the 27 amendments to the Constitution. So we took these notes over 4 different recorded lectures. Will the page change for me? Will it? Okay. And so it goes through the first 10 amendments, which are known as the Bill of Rights, but they're all part of the 27 amendments to the Constitution, and a little bit more detail in some than others. This goes all the way through the 27th Amendment. That's what this test is on, this material here. So I'm going to review the formative that you were to do yesterday, which was specifically over Amendments 11 through 27. So you'll have questions on the test like this. Who would be most likely to fight for an expansion of the Second Amendment? I think that's what it says. Again, my face is blocking some of these. First Amendment, I'm sorry. Which group would be most likely to fight for an expansion of the First Amendment? Okay, so you got to know a little bit. You got to have some notes to go, okay, First Amendment, freedom of speech, press, religion, assembly, petition. So who would care about this? Oh, the Associated Press. You see, if you have the First Amendment covers freedom of the press, I bet you the press would care about this. Okay. Which group would be most likely to fight to restrict the interpretation of the Eighth Amendment? So in other words, who's worried about punishment? The Eighth Amendment says no cruel or unusual punishment. Now, right now, the Eighth Amendment is interpreted to allow the death penalty as long as it's done in a humane way. Well, who would have a problem with that? How about defense attorneys? It's their job to make sure that their clients get what's best for them. Third, the police decide to search my home without a warrant and without permission. What amendment have they violated? So they don't have a warrant, they don't have a plain sight exception, the no reasonable cause. Which one is it? Well, it is absolutely the Fourth Amendment. Search and seizure is all about the Fourth Amendment. And again, if you don't know these, go back and watch these old videos from the last 2 weeks and get these notes down. Okay, it's still in the stream. You just go backwards. And then finally, here's an example of a short answer question. Explain why the 19th Amendment was enacted and what effect it had on our society. So the first step would be to know that women got the right to vote. That is not that's not the effect. That you have to, it's assumed you know that going in. Why was the 19th Amendment enacted? So why did we give women the right to vote? It's too easy if I just go, what did it do? That's too easy. Well, it was enacted because women had been fighting for the right to vote from the beginning of our country's history. But specifically, why did it happen then? During World War I, women were working in factories and stepping up in society. And finally, many people began to realize, oh my gosh, they are contributing members of society just like men. They should be afforded the same rights as men, like the right to vote. And so it had a lot to do with women being so integral to fighting or to working in the factories during World War I. Now, what effect did that have? Doubled the number of voters. Half our country's women. It doubled the number of voters. All right. So that's an example of some questions on the formative. Now, I'm also going to share screen on a worksheet that I gave you Friday. A lot of you did not do it Friday, but lucky for you, I extended the, I kept it open through, it'll end up being late Monday. Right now I have, honors has a separate form, but 37 non-honor students have it in, which is sad because I believe we have, let's see, 70 non-honor students. So, I mean, we just have just over half. Okay. Fred has a lawyer named Mr. Redfern. Mr. Redfern is asked to testify against his client, Fred. Which amendment does this violate? Okay, so you got to think to yourself, all right, my lawyer is being asked to testify against me. Which one does it violate? Fifth. Fifth Amendment not only stops you from incriminating yourself, it stops your lawyer from incriminating you, perhaps your doctor, especially if it's a therapist, something along those lines, and your spouse. Nobody else, but it does protect those. All right, number two. Bill is told he is not eligible for bail and must wait 5 years before his case can be heard. Well, which amendment says you have the right to a fair and speedy trial? It's the Sixth Amendment. The Sixth Amendment. And again, if you're like, I don't know these, that's okay. You're finding this out on a Tuesday. You could be ready for the test on Friday. It's all in all of those videos. It's easier to have done it as we've come along, but if you didn't, there's still time to make it up. All right, I drive cars. I drive a car with signs all over it supporting whatever candidate for president. I'm pulled over by the police and told, people around here don't appreciate that candidate. And we'll give you a ticket every time you drive through here with these signs. Which amendment is being violated? Ladies and gentlemen, that's a First Amendment right. I have a right to have a sign for a candidate, you know, a bumper sticker, that sort of thing on my car. As long as it doesn't have, you know, some sort of intense profanity on it or something like that, we're going to be just fine, and I'm allowed to have that. All right. A new state law, a new law states that any person who has a child under 10 in their home may own a gun without, no, let me try this again. A new law states that any person who has a child under 10 in their home may own a gun without first taking, it should say not allowed to, taking a mandatory safety course. This would be challenged. Which amendment? So they're going to challenge it based on the Second Amendment. Anytime you hear gun, it's Second Amendment. You got to make these correlations. The Second Amendment's about the right to bear arms. It doesn't matter which side of the debate you're on, whether we should have basically more access to guns or less. The issue at hand, the amendment that will be referenced by either side will be the Second Amendment. Okay. Number 5, if the government were able to turn on a camera on your laptop and spy at you through your own computer to see if you're breaking the laws, what amendment would this violate? So I'm speaking to my camera right now, but what we're saying is they just turn that camera on without you knowing. I know people who worry about this and put a little Post-it over their camera. I don't, but you can. It's America. You're allowed to do that if you want. If the government were doing that, that would violate the Fourth Amendment, search and seizure. They're basically searching your home if they turn on this camera without your knowledge. That would violate search and seizure, Fourth Amendment. Number 6, the federal government announces a new test that must be passed to graduate from high school. It's called the National Graduation Test. It is likely to be challenged by several states on the basis of which amendment? Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be challenged by the 10th Amendment, because the 10th Amendment says something's not specifically in the Constitution, then states get that right. There's nothing in the Constitution about what it takes to graduate high school. Most people didn't back then. I mean, like by a long shot. Because it's not specifically mentioned, it's up to the states. The federal government has, people within the federal government have suggested this before, and it gets shot down because each state is going to make up their own rules. And if you happen to move to a different state before you graduate, unfortunately, you're stuck meeting the requirements of that state, which are probably going to be different than Ohio's. Okay, last multiple choice. I'm accused of robbing a bank. The case goes all the way to a jury trial. In the jury selection, 3 openly state that they that they hope I did it because we want to get back at some nasty teachers. Why do I write these like this? And 2 others say, just look at him. He's short. Most short people rob banks. If found guilty, I could definitely get a new trial for sure based on the 6th Amendment because I have the right to a fair trial on the 6th Amendment. If they already hate me going in and they've said mean things about me going in, then that's not a fair trial. All right. These ones were the toughest for you, and they are a little tricky. All right. Sam is an American citizen who has an anti-American website, and government officials and agents regularly monitor and read his website. Can Sam claim his First Amendment rights have been violated? Why or why not? Sam cannot claim his First Amendment rights have been violated because the government didn't shut down his website. They simply read it. They're allowed to read it. It's out there in the public. That's the whole idea of a website. They didn't do anything. They're monitoring it. They can monitor it. You're allowed. They didn't stop it. Now, the moment they try to stop it, that's when we can have this discussion about whether or not it was inappropriate. And a judge can judge or interpret whether or not it had gone too far. But just to read it, no. That's the same idea. Every once in a while, a student will put something on social media, not at our school, of course, but at other schools, about how they cheated on some tests or how they did this one thing or another thing. And then somebody sees it and you go, the family of that student goes, you can't do that. And you go, well, you put it out there for public consumption and that's how we found out. We didn't search anything, but you put it out there. If you put a sign in your front yard that says, I robbed a bank, that's the same as tweeting about it. That's the same as putting it on Facebook. So these things happen. Okay, number 9, a YouTube channel regularly advocates harming some specific group of people and even suggests how and when best to attack them. The government asks YouTube to take down that specific person's channel and posting privileges. Can the people who run this channel claim the First Amendment rights have been violated? Why or why not? No, they cannot. You don't have the right to make threats. That is absolutely hitting the nose, if you remember that metaphor we used last week. Your rights have not been violated. You do not have a right to threaten people. You can say all kinds of unfortunately nasty things, but you can't threaten people. And this says they give specific suggestions about how and when to attack them. That is absolutely not protected by freedom of speech. No way. No way. All right. So a jury defines a defendant guilty of drug possession, drug paraphernalia, and armed robbery. The judge decides since the defendant has served 6 months waiting for trial and could not post bail, that he would sentence the defendant to time served and 4 years probation. The conditions of the probation include weekly drug tests, bi-weekly meetings with the parole officer, a full-time job within 30 days, having no more children without being married, and no more arrests. One part of this sentence violates the 9th Amendment. What part and why? I was surprised at how many people missed this and put, oh, they can't make him get a full-time job. They can make that part of your parole. Now you can get around it by showing how many applications you filled out, how many attempts you made, that you're making a good faith effort. But yeah, they can say that because that's often a part of being a responsible member of society, being able to pay your own bills, that sort of thing. The part that they would absolutely be challenged would be having no more children without being married. The 9th Amendment does not go around and tell you, what it basically says is, just because a right isn't specifically listed doesn't mean you don't have it. And I told you about a court case before where somebody successfully challenged and said, even though the Constitution doesn't say I have a right to have kids, I do. As long as everybody involved is willing, you have that right. And so that's the part. It's not spelled out, but that you have a right to have children, but you do. You have the right to clap your hands, to wave your hands, things like that. There's your rights that you have. They don't have to be spelled out. All right, so those are some examples. Now, Honors, you had some additional questions, but I think you get the main idea here. So this is it. Wednesday, no school, catch up on some work, get these notes done. Thursday, review game. So no recorded lecture, review game. Friday, test during your scheduled class period and only during your scheduled class period. Then Monday, we'll be back to live, or for those of you who choose to stay home, it'll be a little bit different, but basically, other than the postings coming up a little bit later, it's going to be very similar to what we've been doing. Okay? All right, so everybody have a great day and get ready for that test and do that review, guys.